Welcome, my name is Adil, and this is a short presentation based on what we've been working on this year. For those who may have poor vision or may be blind, the slide says that we're working on enabling a world where we see cloudy with a chance of cellular agriculture, meatballs, as well as growing fruits, nuts, vegetables in space. In separate facilities, we plan to have vaccines as well as set up a presence for establishing a manufacturing base in space. So our vision is really to grow food in space, have vaccines made in space, and have manufacturing happen in space. So it seems like Earth is a closed loop system. Everything is recycled by biology on Earth, thanks to evolution. Now, I put the word seems because there may be a possibility that life is not native to Earth. And I have an interest in a theory called panspermia, but I'm not going to talk about my personal theories or sorry, my interest in these theories, not my personal theories. So there may be a wider ecosystem around the galaxy, but so far we have not found a lot of evidence to suggest that. We're barely finding some signs that there may be life on Mars and Venus, as in bacterial life. So anyways, for all intents and purposes, it looks like we live in a closed loop system. And living in this closed loop system, we rely very heavily on our natural systems. There's a finite amount of topsoil. Less than 2% of the water on Earth is fresh water. It's mostly locked up in lakes, river, glaciers. Our coral reefs are in, Great Barrier Reef. Most of it is lost because of coral bleaching. Similar kind of effects are being noticed around the globe because of the nutrient runoff from rivers and streams going into the ocean and pollution itself, as well as climate. Ocean acidification is a big issue because 3 parts of the Earth is water or ocean, and most of the carbon sink, I think, happens in the ocean. The rate of decline for species is something we haven't seen in the past 55 million years, not exactly 66 million years, since the time of Chicxulub, or the last major extinction event. But it's not all doom and gloom, but these things are real. I think it's important to highlight that, again, we rely very heavily on our natural systems, and we are living in very, very calm times compared to the longer history of our planet, not the species, the planet. Now, in terms of systems change, I'm reminded of I don't want to jump from like the problem to the solution, but again, this is a short pitch. So in terms of systems change, I am reminded of a video that I saw by a individual named Richard Tafel. And in this video, Mr. Tafel, who was at that time, I don't know right now, but he was a Republican championing for gay rights in the 90s. And he had an institution at that time. Again, I don't know if this is still still in operation, but the institution is called Log Cabin Republicans. And in this video, Mr. Tafel talks about 5 steps that he recommends for systems change, for building bridges, for seeing the change we wish to see. And I've actually seen this video a number of times, and I was watching it again. I'm going to watch it again after making this video. But the one thing that really stuck with me was, I think this is like point number 1, where Tafel was talking about the one thing. And he uses the metaphor of a trim tab. You have a trim tab in the airplane. I couldn't find a right image, like an image in Creative Commons for trim tab. I found one for a rudder, and I think it's the same. Like you have trim tab and the rudder. kind of sort of the same function, right? So if you change the direction of the trim tab, it changes the overall direction of where you're headed. And so Mr. Taffel says, what is the one policy, one rule, one change that if you were going to exercise this change would result in changing the entire or the whole direction of the ship? So I have no idea how physics really works. I have no idea if the nature of the universe or universes is discrete, or if there is the ability for conscious beings or observers to introduce some change. And like we could talk about this or philosophy. I don't know how you're going to define it. Again, I don't have a background in physics. So even if you introduce change in a system, how could you really say that that change was not predetermined? Good question again. So that's why I say I don't know what the nature of reality is. But I feel that our actions today determine the direction we're going to be heading in the future. So this applies to us as individuals. It applies to the nature of our thoughts, and it definitely applies to the collective set of thoughts, experiences, ideas that we encourage, and make fashionable and act upon. So I feel there may be multiple possible futures. So what are the set of actions must we take in order to live in the reality in the future? Do we want it to be an increasingly better reality? I don't know what a utopia would look like. That depends on who you ask and what they can imagine. Or would it be to the contrary? Now, this is not a cookie cutter approach. I've read this article at some point from BBC, whereby they were hypothesizing, which is a trend we have. It's a persistent trend, and it's probably irreversible for the foreseeable future. I don't know how COVID's going to impact this trend, but the move to urban land like areas has been a trend for quite some time. And as that happens, individuals typically move into a middle class. And based on this article, I forget the exact source, but somebody calculated that if everyone was going to live the lifestyle of what a typical citizen in the United States enjoys or has, then we would need 4 Earths to be able to meet everyone's needs. I didn't go to the math or the specifics on how this is done. And again, this is not a cookie cutter approach. The idea is actually simple and on principle, is to create avenues through which we sustain our basic needs, starting with basics. And so I propose, oh, sorry, that's the slide for the team. So this is the team right now. We've gone through formation and reformation, and I've been most recently labeled as Space Appleseed, which I kind of like that. I have a seed right here. Just planting seeds and make the world a slightly better place, right? For myself, for our team, for my child, myself, my team, and the wider world. Very grateful to work with Ruset. He's a mechanical engineer from Curtin University, originally from Sri Lanka. And we've worked on a couple of things, and I'm going to talk about them right now. But before I do that, our vision is definitely aligned. We want to see a healthier planet, and we're doing this for ourselves, and because we want to eat good food, and we want to live in a good shelter, and we believe we can make, if we enjoy this, then we can create a reality where everyone can enjoy the same thing we're enjoying in a sustainable manner. So this is what we have made in 2020 21, this year. This is a snapshot of some of the things we have worked on. So I'm going to work my way from left to right. The first one is was a very first concept of what we refer to as an AMU. It stands for an autonomous manufacturing unit. So this was prototype simulate design number 1.0, whereby we conceived of the means to be able to move goods from one structure to another on a rail system, whereby there's a robotic arm between these two areas. So they perform different functions. And the means to be able to move stuff back and forth is like, I was just like, we're just curious, like, how would this, like, what is it basically the first minimum viable product. So this one is powered right now with solar power, with embedded solar panels on board. That may change in the future. So yeah, that was our very first design. Actually, the very first thing we did was we worked, Erusit was tasked with learning about propulsion, because we were sending emails to companies. We didn't know much about the landscape at that time. We were just very, very green. And we were sending emails. We didn't really hear back or get a reply at that time. We didn't know of a lot of startups. We were thinking it's pretty much SpaceX and Blue Origin and ULA. So we reached out to 2 out of 3, and we didn't get a response. So we started asking ourselves, well, why don't we just make our own rockets? And so Rusit was tasked with this, almost knowing nothing about aerospace. We found some PDFs and some courses. I must say, Rusit, that I have no part in this other than giving Rusit the creative and engineering freedom to work on this. So the first set of simulations failed. So this image here and this image here. So the one with the nozzle shooting the propellant, and this rocket here is the same. And so again, yeah, the first couple of simulations failed. These are simulations. We never did a test fire. We don't have a facility for test fire. We don't have the approvals to do that right now. But after successive tries, the 2-stage rocket was able to go, I'm trying to pull this from memory, more than 2,800 meters. So it's not even close to the point where we can get to space, but that was a very positive sign for us. And I went to Lucid, man, if you can go from wherever we were, almost zero, to getting something going in simulation, 300 meters, sorry, 3,000 meters, not 300 meters, 3,000 meters in altitude, and have the parachutes come out and get that thing to come back in one piece, then it's not a re-landing, nothing fancy. But I'm like, if we can do that in simulation, then what can we not do, right? And so at that time, an opportunity came up. There was actually, the opportunity came up in February, but we were too focused on rocket RP, we call it RPR task, and well, AMU and RPR, which is not for public, because we don't want to put all that work in public for a variety of reasons, security being one, and also IP. But yeah, so we and we were doing some work related to launch today. We're trying to get that going so we can generate some sales and have some revenue coming in. But that took our focus away from 3 things we didn't do well was not raise money. Number 1, a little bit of money. Number 2, chronic mistake of not talking to enough customers, which I don't know why we didn't do it. I can kind of think of the reasons why, but I don't want to talk about that right now. And number 3 is that opportunity for what I'm about to talk next is the Canadian Space Agency's Deep Space Food Challenge. So yeah, that opportunity came in front of us in March, I think, February, end of February, March. And we didn't really tackle it till a month before the due date. And so we started working on that next. Our methodology here was to absorb patents based on the people we look up to, meaning the company that they've started historically, only patents in the public domain, because we operate 100% transparently. If we make use of somebody else's technology, it has to be in public domain, or we should be in a capacity. Sorry, we must be in a capacity, not should be, must be in a capacity, or we basically should license it. And so we believe in giving credit where it's due, because that's the reality I want to create for myself, for my daughter, everyone that works with me, is to have a fair and equitable architecture for anything we're working on. And I truly believe you can do that and still do really well in life and in business. Anyways, enough, like, so not enough, but I'm now going to talk about my own philosophy. So coming back to our submission, we absorbed patents through, actually Rusa did a lot of work. I think we spent like 20 hours absorbing patents from Planetary Resources, which was a company focused on extracting materials from asteroid and mining asteroids and cataloging them. Phenomenal company launched by Chris Luecki and team back about a while ago, 10, 12 years ago, I think. But the company was eventually acquired by an Ethereum-based company called Consensus. And when that happened, Planetary Resources patents all went into the public domain. So we absorbed those patents, and some of the components you see, particularly here at the bottom, is a component called the IPPSM, and I forget what the abbreviation stands for, but basically this moves the overall device in the direction you want it to go. And I think this is also part of the IPPSM. Everything else is something we worked on. This is not just a picture. We have simulations here. Our robotic arm works. This is a robotic arm, as rudimentary as it is. It took a while for all the wheels and axles and joints to work, because the first time Bruce had made this, it was just kind of going in a loop. Sorry about the background noise. I should have booked a meeting room here. So yeah, we plug this here, and then it kind of goes 360 on the different joints. And it also, because it can do this, right, at the red base, the green on the red, it can do this. And obviously then it can do this. And once you have this, you have a full range of motion, you know, around the facility. So, so yeah, we hoisted this up on the joints, and right now we can move it manually. So we can take the mouse and move it manually and make it do stuff. So we haven't put the code in to make it do certain functions, like picking something and planting something. We haven't built the machine vision systems, but we know how to do that, or we know at least who to begin talking to, and or the kind of people we should be hiring to make that happen. So our goal is to raise a small amount of money and have a test facility somewhere in Ontario, or an ideal location. Ontario would be ideal because I live here, but I'm open to suggestions. And then develop a proof of concept, whether by ourselves or working with someone, and do a really good job at the proof of concept. Anyway, so that's what our submission for the Deep Space Food Challenge. We scaled down the design that you see in front of you to the constraints. They were very strict specifications, so we had to tone down the design. And yeah, we didn't make it to the next round, but we're still gonna work on this, right? And this is another this is a smaller set of invention. This is I actually forget exactly, but this controls the rate at which the fuel is injected into the nozzle, if I remember correctly. So this is tied in with this. So this thing controls the rate at which the rocket fires. And this was Rusit's invention. And based on what I remember, he mentioned this was an addition to any design that may exist out there. And as small as it may be, innovation is about small set of changes that accumulate over a period of time. And last but not the least, I always forget why we have this picture here. Anyway, so yeah, this is one of our transporters, which we could move these pictures around. And this transporter is the vehicle that is responsible for moving goods between AMUs. Okay, so this was our set of invention, and to build up on that, this is how these are some of the other inventions. Like we kind of looked at what kind of mining machinery we would need. This was before we knew of the work that folks like Jim Caravalla are doing. We don't know him personally. We've just been on some of the webinars where he has been a speaker. So Caravalla is like totally next level, and we were just starting in this area. So we're like, how would we mine these rocks? How would we extract the material from them? How would we pump fluid into them or some kind of lubricant to get the materials we want? And how would we scrape them? So these are all Rusit's invention. Again, just being given the creative ability to be able to work on them. And this one in particular didn't take a lot of time, if I remember correctly. Rusit was able to put these together in a relatively short amount of time. So yeah, it was again very good from an exploratory phase. A little bit of a segue. So we were also doing the work and attending the events. We became a little bit aware of the set of problems that exist in the outer space arena. Not a landscape like view, but like we became aware of some of the issues like space debris and other issues, which I don't want to talk about right now. But suffice to say, we are invested towards seeing the safe, sustainable, secure, cooperative ways through which we can open up outer space. And we want to work with the Secure World Foundation, the space agencies, the military institutions, in order to put a structure to police outer space and other domains so that we can all enjoy abundance in a manner that's good for us, because we don't want to just enable a world of abundance and everyone becomes fat and lazy. So we think about our designs a fair bit, not just think, we do the work, but we're always thinking in a Gerard O'Neill sense, I guess, that just putting walls and structure around some area, and O'Neill used to talk about it, that's not necessarily going to create better outcomes. So you got to think about the human aspect, the human psychology, systems design, and other things in order to be able to create realities that are universally good for others and yourself, or you and others. Hey, so come back to the slide. We kept iterating on the manufacturing units. We gave it a name called autonomous manufacturing units because we want them to perform autonomously. And this is why I was just talking about safety and security. And it's basically 3 components whereby you have, I'm sorry, this is the actual transporter. This was the fuel depot. We want to be 100% autonomous. We want to make our own hydrolocks, unless somebody else is doing it at a cheaper price point and sustainably at that. Somebody we can work with. So yeah, this is what we did other stuff too, but this is a snapshot. So this is a kind of consolidated view of what the AMUs would look like. We just kind of overlaid it on a black background, so it starts becoming a little bit more real of how it would actually look in space. And this is a slightly kind of larger picture of the orbiting greenhouses. Going back to the very first slide, remember there will be different versions of these making different things. The ones that are growing plants and trees, ideally, will be polyculture facilities, meaning you are growing different types of plants and trees in a singular construct. How big these constructs are going to be is contingent upon how effective the policing is. And the size also determines where you're going to place them. We never wanted to place these in Earth's orbit, even though GEO, or the geosynchronous orbit, is like 30,000 kilometer range. It's quite a distance, but we still didn't want to place it. Like, we're thinking lunar to begin with. There's like increased activity with Gateway and return to the moon with Artemis, and we sense it definitely looks like moon's going to open up in a big way. And I won't get into the distance and cost thing. There's different schools of thought on it. I'm not an expert there, far from it. It doesn't look like you need to open up the lunar surface in order to be able to go to Mars, but I think we can put that real estate to use. So that's one of the feedback, or one of the ideas that has been suggested to us is trying to figure out if you can attach one of your AMUs to, or they are at least the orbiting greenhouses construct to the Gateway. But the vision is that we have AMUs making a lot of constructs that you see in front of you. And within these constructs, we are growing cellular agricultural products, greens, even trees, making vaccines there, and establishing a base for manufacturing. That the AMUs can make a lot of the kind of devices or constructs you see in front of you, and we can connect them all together. And then we have this idea, which we haven't really developed or even started working on, but we call it the hopper. And the hopper is a ion thruster with the ability to be able to go from one construct to another. It just keeps hopping. So think about it like, you know how you have the kangaroo and the joey. So the kangaroo's baby sits in the pouch. So the hopper is kind of like that. And the hopper is really the transporter's evolved version. So we envision that the hopper / transporter will have arms that are next level. So I won't talk about that right now, but, and I guess I've shared enough. And the hopper does the magic, the extraction. These are all, there's a lot of work to be done based on some of the examples I shared, but the hopper extracts if it's food, it's already washed, processed, maybe frozen, depends on how quickly you can get it back. And if the economics make sense, and the hopper gets it to the point of re-entry. If it's vaccines, the same. I mean, you don't wash it and all that. You just get the packaged goods. And this is going to require a lot of oversight. And, the regulations would have to be in place so that, a lot of quality jobs can be created overseeing all of this. And, the means and ability to be able to have remote workers putting on VR goggles, managing these facilities or co-managing them, along with having basically that human in the loop in the process is what I mean. So tons of potential for creating a lot of jobs. This is just a placeholder and another placeholder. And same as before, we put the inventions in a background to be able to kind of showcase what they would look like in as singular entities. But again, imagine with the adequate provisions and regulations and approvals. Not sure how that's going to come about right now. I was thinking about that too. What if we had a lot of such facilities in particular points around the solar system and the economics made just the right sense? What would this do for global healthcare? What if everyone could eat quality, nutritious food, and we could procure, make, enable all of this? I don't know what the right word is, using 100% sustainable means. Because there's no shortage of space. If you look at the scaled version of the solar system, Earth is such a tiny planet in front of the sun, and there's all of the space available between, well, in the inner solar system, so around from Earth to Mars, I would say. And that's really where we're interested in. Originally, we were interested in Venus, but we stopped working on that because there's some signs that there may be bacterial life. There's some things there. So we want to build this as a radically transparent company, meaning ideally everything, including meetings and emails, would be sitting on a public ledger. I can't see anything that we'd want to keep in the private arena unless we're working with a NATO-led institution or some entity, military entity that is part of the alliance, and we cannot share. Like, I don't want to give false impression. I'm a civilian, so that's the only exception I can think of, that something would have to be not in the public domain. But otherwise, we're thinking of making this radically transparent. How the IP is going to be governed in such a reality is a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think it could be hybrid in the beginning, or it could be just a traditional startup, but the eventual vision is to harness the power of the collective, the crowds, because good ideas and great talent can really come from anywhere in the world, and we want to harness that. Thank you very much for watching or listening to me do this demo. Rusit is back, and you can find us on LinkedIn. If you Google my first name and my last name is Khan and the word awake, AWAK, I'm on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn and add me and ask me any questions you have. My email is quite accessible too. If you Google my name, I'm pretty sure you can find my email. Rusit is also on LinkedIn. If you have any technical questions, feel free to get in touch with Rusit. Thank you a lot for your time. Have a wonderful holiday season, and let's make space and our solar system a wonderful place. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.